Chapter 1. The disappearing wife. Savannah Cole had once been the kind of woman who filled every room she entered. Her laughter was a melody that drew attention, her energy radiant like the morning sun over Georgia. But on that Thursday morning, as she stood in front of her bathroom mirror, she could barely recognize the person staring back. Her reflection was a tired version of a once vibrant woman, 42 years old, with soft curls streaked with gray, full lips pressed tight in exhaustion, and brown eyes that used to dance but now merely reflected survival. The silk robe she wore clung to her body, showing the curves she once carried proudly but had begun to hide under shapeless dresses. From the next room came the sound of her husband's voice, Marcus Cole, 50, a powerful congressman, a man who could charm crowds and silence critics with one look. "Savannah, we're going to be late," he called out, his tone sharp with the impatience that had become their routine. She inhaled deeply. "I'll be right there." But she didn't move. She stared at herself for a long time. The hum of the air conditioner, the only sound between her and the life she no longer wanted. Her fingers brushed over a faint bruise at her collarbone, almost invisible beneath makeup, not from violence, but from the emotional chokehold that came from years of being unseen. When she finally walked out, Marcus was buttoning his cufflinks, his reflection perfect in the mirror of their bedroom. "You wore that dress last week," he said without looking at her. Savannah froze. "It's clean. I'm just saying, you're representing me at a public function. Try not to look like you've given up." She bit her lip. Every word from him was like a pin pushed into her skin, small, precise, and cumulative. At the fundraiser that evening, Savannah smiled the way she had learned to smile, not with joy, but as armor. Cameras flashed, reporters asked questions. "Mrs. Cole, what's your secret to supporting such a successful husband?" She replied with the same rehearsed answer she had been giving for years: love, patience, and faith. But inside, she was screaming. When the gala ended, she slipped away from the banquet hall and stood alone on the balcony. The city stretched beneath her, glittering, indifferent, free. She could smell the rain coming, feel the wind teasing her hair. She had never felt so lonely in a crowd. Then her phone buzzed. A message, unknown number. "He's not who you think he is." Attached was a photo, Marcus in his car, holding hands with a younger woman, whose face was half hidden by shadows. Savannah's throat tightened, her heart pounding. For years, she had suspected, but seeing proof was like swallowing glass. That night, she didn't confront him. She didn't cry. She went home, undressed slowly, and sat at the edge of the bed, staring at her wedding ring. The diamonds sparkled under the lamplight, perfect, cold, eternal. In the darkness, Marcus entered quietly, reeking of expensive perfume that wasn't hers. "You asleep?" Savannah pretended to be. He climbed into bed beside her, scrolling through his phone until the light flickered across his face. "You know," he murmured, "you've been distant lately. You might want to fix that before people start talking." She said nothing. She just turned her back to him and whispered into the pillow, so softly that even she barely heard it. "People already are." The next morning, she woke before dawn. Marcus was gone, his side of the bed cold. Savannah sat up, feeling an ache so deep it seemed to live in her bones. She went to the kitchen and found a note on the counter. "Breakfast meeting. Don't forget to smile at the photographers." She almost laughed. Instead, she opened her laptop. For years she had written small thoughts, prayers, fragments, diary entries she never intended anyone to read. But this time, her fingers moved differently. The words came like a storm. "This is not the story of a perfect wife. This is the story of a woman who learned how to disappear in order to survive." Hours passed. When she stopped, she realized she had written 10 pages, raw, confessional, real. She titled it "The Woman Who Forgot Her Own Name." Then something inside her shifted. She called in sick to the charity, the event she was supposed to attend, and instead drove to a quiet beach 2 hours away. She left her phone in the car, walked barefoot across the sand, and let the waves erase her footprints. Savannah didn't cry. She just let the water reach her knees and whispered to the wind, "Who am I when no one is looking?" The answer came in silence. By nightfall, she had made a decision. She returned home, packed a small suitcase, and took only what she needed: clothes, her journals, a single photograph of her and her daughter Lena, smiling years ago before everything broke. Before leaving, she looked one last time around the house, every corner filled with the ghost of the woman she used to be. Then she took off her wedding ring, placed it on the marble counter, and wrote a note. "Marcus, I'm not running away. I'm setting myself free." She locked the door behind her. The next day, the headlines screamed, Congressman's wife missing, authorities investigate possible abduction. Marcus appeared on national TV, his voice trembling with calculated sorrow. "Savannah is the love of my life," he said, eyes glistening. "Please, if anyone has seen her." Savannah watched the broadcast from a cheap motel room, her hair tucked under a cap, the walls smelling of cigarette smoke and faded bleach. She almost smiled. For the first time in years, no one was telling her what to wear, how to stand, how to speak. For the first time, she was invisible, and it felt like freedom. She whispered to her reflection in the motel mirror, "I'm not gone, I'm just becoming real." That night, she opened her notebook again and began a new chapter, not of her marriage, not of her pain, but of her resurrection. "My name is Savannah Cole. I was a wife, a daughter, a ghost, but tonight, I become my own witness." Outside, the rain began to fall, gentle, cleansing, endless dot, and somewhere in the distance, the world was still searching for the woman who had finally found herself. Chapter 2. The woman who became a ghost. The motel was silent except for the sound of dripping rain. Savannah sat on the edge of the narrow bed, watching the water slide down the window pane like tears she couldn't shed. 3 days had passed since she left her house, 3 days since the world believed she was gone, taken, kidnapped, erased. She had seen her face on every local news channel, described in cold, efficient words: female, African American, age 42, approximately 5', last seen wearing a cream-colored coat. Savannah laughed bitterly. They were searching for a woman who didn't exist anymore. She had taken a bus to a small town by the coast, one of those forgotten places where nobody asked questions, the kind of place where time itself seemed tired. She registered at the motel under the name Maya Solar. It was the first name that came to her mind. Maya, like illusion. Solar, like light, a contradiction, and maybe that's why it felt right. When the clerk handed her the key, he didn't even look up. Room 6, cash only. Perfect. In the quiet of her new anonymity, Savannah started to breathe differently. She learned to walk slowly, to speak less, to exist without being measured by someone else's gaze. She ate at a small diner each morning, ordering black coffee and scrambled eggs from a waitress who called everyone "hun." And in the afternoons, she wrote, her notebook filled with fragments of memory. The first time Marcus had ignored her tears, the first time he had told her she wasn't polished enough to stand beside him at a political rally, the 1,000 tiny humiliations that had turned love into submission. But between those pages, something unexpected began to grow. Not anger, not revenge, but clarity. She started to write letters she never intended to send. "To the woman I used to be, I forgive you for trying so hard to be loved that you forgot to love yourself. To the man who broke me, thank you for teaching me what silence sounds like. It's the sound I now fill with my own voice." A week later, she found a small volunteer center near the docks. They helped single mothers, homeless women, victims of domestic violence. She walked in, pretending she was just curious, but the director, a kind woman in her 60s named Miss Della, looked at her and said, "You've come to help, haven't you?" Savannah hesitated. "Maybe." "Well," Miss Della smiled, "around here, maybes are just yeses waiting for courage." That was how Savannah, or rather, Maya Sola, began to rebuild her life. She cleaned floors, served food, listened to stories that mirrored pieces of her own pain. Every woman she met carried the same invisible scars. A betrayal, a wound, a silence. And in helping them, Savannah began to heal herself. Back in the city, Marcus was unraveling. The police investigation had turned up nothing. His missing wife had become a public scandal. Some journalists whispered theories: domestic dispute, secret lover, suicide, staged disappearance. His political advisors urged him to keep calm. "Play the grieving husband," they said. "Public sympathy is powerful." And Marcus did. He appeared on talk shows, tears perfectly timed, voice trembling on cue. But when the cameras stopped, he would stand before his mirror and whisper, "You stupid woman, you'll come back. You always do." But Savannah didn't come back. Instead, she was rediscovering the joy of simplicity, washing dishes, laughing with women who called her Miss Maya, sitting by the ocean at sunset. For the first time, no one expected her to smile for the cameras. She could frown, she could cry, she could just exist. One evening, Miss Della found her sitting outside, watching the horizon bleed into gold. "You've got the eyes of someone who's lived many lives," the old woman said. Savannah smiled faintly. "Maybe I have." "You running from something?" Savannah's hand tightened around her mug. "From who I used to be." Miss Della nodded slowly, as if she'd heard that story before. Well, don't run too far. Sometimes we need to go back and forgive our shadows before we can walk into the light. Savannah looked down. And if the shadows belong to someone else, then you forgive them too. Not for them, for yourself. The wind carried the scent of salt and rain. Savannah's chest ached with something she couldn't name, grief, relief, or both. Weeks turned into months. She started teaching English to the women at the shelter, helping them write job applications, letters to social workers, even poems. One night, after class, one of them, a thin teenager named Lena, asked softly, "Miss Maya, were you ever scared?" Savannah smiled. "Every day, but you don't look scared now." "That's because I learned something important." "Lena, what's that?" "Fear doesn't disappear. You just learn to walk with it." But the world she had escaped was catching up. One morning, a woman walked into the shelter carrying a newspaper. Her voice trembled as she said, "Ain't this you, Miss Maya?" Savannah froze. On the front page was her face, or rather, her old face. Savannah Cole, wife of Congressman, declared legally dead after 6 months missing. Her breath caught. Legally dead. It should have terrified her. Instead, she felt an unexpected peace. It was as if the world had signed the death certificate of her old life so she could finally be reborn. That night, she stood before the mirror again, not the gilded one of her former mansion, but the cracked, rust-edged mirror of her small room. She studied her reflection, her fuller face, her tired eyes, the beginnings of new lines around her mouth from genuine laughter. She whispered, "Savannah Cole is dead." Then she smiled. "But Maya Solar, she's alive." Months later, she submitted an anonymous essay to a small online publication. It was titled "The Ghost Who Chose to Live." She wrote, "They'll tell you that a woman's worth is tied to the man she stands beside, but I learned that sometimes you have to vanish from the picture to see your own face." The essay spread quietly, first shared among small women's groups, then among advocacy circles, until one night, Miss Della showed her the computer screen and whispered, "Honey, you've gone viral." Savannah laughed softly, almost in disbelief. "Guess ghosts can still speak, huh?" Miss Della took her hand. "Not ghosts, baby. Prophets." But while Savannah's words began to heal others, they also reached someone she never intended them to. Evelyn Cole, Marcus's mother. Evelyn was a woman of steel and ice, the one who had taught Marcus that emotions were weaknesses. But when she read "The Ghost Who Chose to Live," something inside her cracked. She recognized her daughter-in-law in every word, the silence, the pain, the invisible suffocation. That night, for the first time in decades, Evelyn cried. And that was the beginning of something neither Savannah nor Marcus could have predicted: the slow, irreversible collapse of the empire Marcus had built on lies. In her small rented room, Savannah wrote one more line before going to bed. Maybe the only way to be found is to disappear first. Then she turned off the light. And the room fell into a peace she had never known before. Outside, the sea whispered against the shore, a lullaby for the woman who had finally become real. The Capitol Hotel ballroom gleamed with glass and gold, yet every reflection in its mirrors seemed slightly wrong, too polished, too perfect, too hollow. Marcus Cole stood near the stage, shaking hands with donors and flashing that signature politician's smile, the one trained by PR consultants and hardened by ambition. But behind that grin, exhaustion was beginning to rot. That it had been almost a year since Savannah's disappearance, since her death, legally speaking, and though the world still saw a grieving husband turned reformist hero, the man behind the mask was crumbling. Every time he looked into a mirror, he swore he could see her, not the ghostly kind, not a specter from nightmares, but a flicker in his conscience, a question echoing in the silence she'd left behind. He'd thought her absence would liberate him. Instead, it became a cage. Rumors had begun to resurface, whispers from former aides, recordings of his temper, old financial scandals that wouldn't stay buried. His image as the compassionate widower had been his greatest shield. Without it, he was just another man afraid of being seen for what he truly was. As he stood there beneath the chandeliers, a journalist approached a young black woman with sharp eyes and a calm, deliberate voice. "Congressman Cole," she said. "Camille Raines, American Voice Weekly. I've been covering the online essays circulating lately, particularly one called "The Ghost Who Chose to Live." Ever read it?" Marcus froze. He hadn't, but the title alone punched through his composure. Camille tilted her head. "It's powerful, about a woman escaping an abusive marriage with a man who used words instead of fists. Her gaze held his like a mirror. Some readers think it's fiction, some think it's confession. Marcus's smile didn't falter, but his throat tightened. I'm afraid I don't indulge in tabloid material. Camille's smile was slight, knowing, of course, sir. But ghosts tend to tell the truth better than the living. She walked away, heels clicking like a metronome, counting down his downfall. Meanwhile, hundreds of miles away, by the sea, Maya Sola was becoming something of a legend. The small essay she'd written, in her dimly lit room, had turned into a movement. Women wrote to her from all over the country, some anonymous, some signing their names bravely at the bottom of their letters. You made me realize I wasn't crazy. I left last week. I'm scared, but I'm free. Thoth, thank you for being the voice I didn't have. Savannah never replied. She didn't know how, but each message became a candle in her heart, lighting corners that had once been dark with shame. Miss Della teased her. Girl, you're the Harriet Tubman of broken hearts. Savannah laughed softly. I'm just trying to breathe. At the shelter, she began hosting what they called mirror nights. Women gathered in a circle, holding small handheld mirrors. They'd look into them and say one truth aloud, any truth. I'm still scared of him. I hate my body. I don't know who I am without pain. And then, slowly, one by one, they began saying new truths. I survived. I'm learning. I deserve peace. Each word fell into the air like a small resurrection. Savannah never told them her real name. To them, she was Maya, the woman who understood, the one who smiled gently and said, "You're not crazy. You're just healing." But sometimes, late at night, when she was alone, she'd whisper her old name into the dark, not out of longing, but remembrance. Savannah. It sounded like a place, not a person. A place she once lived but could never go back to in the city. Evelyn Cole, Marcus's mother, sat in her study, staring at the computer screen. She had reread The Ghost, Who Chose to Live more times than she could count. Each time, she noticed something new, a phrase, a rhythm, a cadence she recognized. Savannah had been a gentlewoman, too gentle, Evelyn used to think. Not built for politics, not sharp enough for Marcus's world. Evelyn had once told her, "You're lucky he chose you. Keep him proud." Now, reading these words, Evelyn realized she had been complicit. She had taught her son that control was love. She had taught her daughter-in-law that silence was respect. And in doing so, she had broken them both. That night, Evelyn went to her son's house unannounced. Marcus was in his office, half drunk, staring at campaign reports. "You look tired," she said. "I'm fine," he muttered. "You're not, you're haunted." He laughed bitterly. "By what?" "My wife's ghost." Evelyn looked at him. Really looked. Maybe not her ghost, Marcus, maybe by the man you became because you never learned to be anything else. He slammed the table. "You think I killed her?" Evelyn didn't flinch. "No, I think you killed the woman she was. The rest she buried herself." Marcus's eyes glimmered with something between fury and guilt. "You sound like you believe she's still alive." Evelyn picked up her coat. "I don't know, son, but if she is, she's freer than either of us." 2 weeks later, a journalist named Camille Rains drove down the coast to meet Maya Solar. She'd traced small clues from the essay, local rumors, volunteer boards, until she found the shelter by the sea. Maya Solar. Camille asked the receptionist. Miss Della appeared instead, smiling cautiously. "Depends who's asking. I'm a journalist. I'm not here to expose anyone, just to understand." Miss Della's eyes studied her, then softened. "You've already found what you're looking for. You just don't know it yet." But that night, when Savannah came to the shelter, Miss Della told her, "Someone's looking for you, baby, not him, a reporter." Savannah froze. Her instinct screamed to run, pack up, vanish again. But something inside her whispered, "No more running." That evening, as waves crashed against the rocks, Savannah waited on the pier. Camille approached slowly, holding a notebook but not opening it. "Your essay changed lives," she said. "It changed mine." Savannah smiled faintly. "Then why do you look like you came to steal a ghost story?" Camille's throat tightened. "Because I think I know who you are." Savannah looked out at the horizon. "Then keep it to yourself. The world already buried me once." Camille hesitated. "You don't want to reclaim your name." "My name was never the problem," Savannah said softly. "It was what came with it." The wind whipped her hair, carrying the scent of salt and rain, the same scent from the night she escaped. Camille lowered her voice. "If you wanted, your story could help millions. Not anonymously, not as Maya, but as you." Savannah turned to her, eyes filled with both pain and light. Maybe one day, but not yet. Let the world heal a little before it sees the truth. Camille nodded. Then, I'll wait. As Savannah walked back toward the shelter, she passed by the row of windows, each reflecting her face in fragments. In every reflection, she saw a different woman, the victim, the fighter, the teacher, the survivor. And for the first time, she didn't flinch. Because in that house of mirrors, she finally recognized them all as her. The morning sky over the coast was bruised purple when Savannah woke. Rain had fallen all night, soaking the world in silence. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the little notebook that had once saved her life. Maya Sola. The name still felt safe, but for how long? Since that night on the pier, Camille Raines had kept her promise. No articles, no photos, just silence. But Savannah knew that silence in the media was never permanent. Sooner or later, stories found their way to the surface. Like drowned bodies, the sea refused to keep. At the shelter, the women were painting the walls that morning, bright yellows, hopeful blues. Lena, the teenager she'd mentored, danced around with a brush. Miss Maya, I saw you on the internet again. Someone quoted your essay on TV. Savannah laughed, startled. Really? Yeah, that congressman's wife, the one who went missing. They said your words sound just like hers. The paintbrush slipped from Savannah's hand. Lena didn't notice. Isn't that crazy? Like you and her have been through the same thing. Savannah forced a smile. Yeah, crazy. But her pulse thundered. The past was coming closer. In Washington, Marcus was unraveling in public after months of denial. His reputation had begun to fracture. Whispers turned into investigations. Someone had leaked emails, recordings, proof of intimidation, of verbal abuse toward campaign staff, even toward Savannah. And there it was again, the essay, the ghost who chose to live. Commentators were connecting dots. Some called it coincidence, others called it confession. One headline blazed across social media. Is Congressman Cole's dead wife alive and telling her story? Marcus threw his phone at the wall. He stormed into his advisor's office. Find out who wrote that essay. Now, his chief of staff looked pale. We already tried. The account's protected by privacy layers. Whoever she is, she knows how to hide. Marcus clenched his fists. She always did. Evelyn Cole watched the news in her living room. For years she'd believed power could clean any stain, but now, she saw her son drowning in the same pride she'd once admired. When a journalist asked her for comment, she didn't deny the rumors. Instead, she said quietly, some people don't vanish to escape justice, they vanish to survive it. It went viral within hours. That night, Camille called Savannah. They're getting close, she said. Marcus has a private investigator tracing the IP source of the essay. It's only a matter of time. Savannah's voice was calm. Then maybe it's time to stop hiding. Camille hesitated. If you go public, it won't be gentle. They'll question everything. Your mental health, your story, your motives. Savannah looked out at the ocean, the moon reflecting off the waves. They already buried me once. I've got nothing left to lose. 3 days later, Camille published her piece. Headline: The Ghost Who Chose to Live, exclusive. Interview with Maya Solar, the woman behind the words. The article didn't name her real identity. It told the story of a woman who had escaped emotional imprisonment and rebuilt her life helping others. There were no dates, no cities, no husband's name, only truth. The response was explosive. Women flooded online forums, sharing their own experiences. Churches, talk shows, podcasts, everyone quoted Maya Solar. Some called her a hero, others called her a liar. Marcus called her a threat. Within a week, paparazzi were circling the shelter. Volunteers stopped coming. Anonymous letters arrived, some hateful, some begging for help. Miss Della found Savannah in her office one night, surrounded by unopened envelopes. Baby, you can't save the world, the old woman said gently. I'm not trying to, Savannah whispered. I'm just trying to make it believe I exist. Miss Della put a hand on her shoulder. Then do it your way, not theirs. But the world was moving too fast. Late one evening, Savannah was walking home when she noticed a black SUV parked near the corner. She froze. The window rolled down slightly. A man's silhouette, a camera flash. She turned away and walked faster. The sound of her own heartbeat filled her ears. When she reached her door, she found an envelope taped to it. Inside was a single photograph, her, sitting by the ocean, eyes closed, peaceful, and written across it in black ink, "Found you." The next morning, Camille arrived at the shelter, breathless. He knows. Savannah's body went cold. Marcus Camille nodded. His people tracked a donation record. The name Maya Solar matched the shelter's payroll. He's on his way here. For a moment, Savannah couldn't move. Then, slowly, she smiled, calm, resolute. Good, she said. Let him see what he lost. When Marcus arrived, the sky was gray and heavy with rain. His convoy of black cars looked obscene against the modest shelter. He stormed through the doors, like a man entering a battlefield. The women froze mid-conversation. And then he saw her, Savannah, standing by the window, wearing a simple blue dress, her hair natural, her body fuller, softer, radiant in a way that didn't need approval. Savannah, he breathed. She didn't move. Maya. He stared at her like seeing a ghost. You faked your death. She shook her head. No, you did. Every time you've told me who I should be, you destroyed my career. I didn't have to, she said quietly. You built it on my silence. When I stopped being silent, it fell on its own. Marcus's eyes burned with fury and something darker. Shame. You think you can humiliate me like this? Savannah stepped closer, her voice steady. I didn't do this to humiliate you. I did it to survive you. For the first time, Marcus looked small, the powerful congressman reduced to a man staring at the reflection of what he'd broken. Outside, reporters were gathering. Cameras flashed through the glass. Savannah turned to Miss Della. Opened the doors. Are you sure? Yes, it's time. The reporters swarmed in, microphones out, shouting questions. Are you really Savannah Cole? Did you fake your disappearance? Are you accusing Congressman Cole of abuse? Savannah raised a hand. The noise softened. My name, she said, voice trembling but strong, is Savannah Maya Cole, and I am not missing. I was silenced. Gasps rippled through the crowd. I didn't come here to destroy anyone. I came here to live, and to help others live too. If the truth destroys lies, that's not my fault. That's justice. Marcus stood frozen, eyes glistening under the stormlight. Savannah looked at him one last time. You wanted the world to pity you. Now let it see you. Then, she turned away, out the door, into the rain, into freedom. That night, Camille uploaded the full interview. It broke every record. Headlines flooded the nation. The ghost has a name. Congressman's wife returns from the dead with the truth. Savannah Cole speaks. A story of survival. By dawn, Savannah's face, her real face, was everywhere. Some praised her, others mocked her, but she no longer belonged to their opinions. For the first time, she was whole. In her small room, she stood before the mirror once more. Not the trembling woman of the past, not the ghost who ran, but the woman who stayed. Her reflection met her eyes. You did it, she whispered. The mirror didn't answer. It didn't need to, because this time, she didn't see a ghost. She saw herself. The morning after Savannah's revelation, America awoke restless. Every television, every phone, every coffee shop murmured her name, Savannah Cole. Some called her the voice of every silenced woman. Others called her a liar who faked her death for fame. But no one was silent anymore. Savannah stood on the balcony of her small apartment above the shelter, barefoot, watching the city below flicker with sirens and cameras. The air smelled like rain and electricity, that strange mix of renewal and danger. Inside, Elijah was making coffee. His quiet movements were the only thing keeping her anchored. They're outside again, she murmured. I know. They won't stop. He handed her a cup. Then we won't either. She smiled faintly. You didn't sign up for this. I didn't sign up to be a doctor in a shelter either, he said softly. But life doesn't ask for signatures. It asks for courage. By noon, her face was everywhere. News panels debated her truth like a courtroom. Hashtags trended. Hashtag believes Savannah. Hash ghost or liar. Hash the Maya effect on talk shows. Politicians used her story as ammunition. Some praised her bravery. Others accused her of undermining family values. And then the government stepped in. The Attorney General announced an official investigation into Marcus Cole's alleged misconduct, including the possibility that he'd falsified police reports the night Savannah disappeared. The announcement broke Marcus completely. He appeared on live television that evening, looking gaunt, defensive. I am a victim of slander, he said. My wife is mentally unstable. This is a tragedy, not a crime. Savannah watched in silence. She'd expected anger, but instead, she felt pity, the kind that comes when you realize your abuser is just a coward hiding in a costume. Days turned into a blur of interviews. letters, and court summonses. Camille handled the press. Elijah handled the foundation. Savannah handled her fear. One afternoon, a black car arrived at the shelter. A woman in a gray suit stepped out, elegant, composed, official. "Mrs. Cole," she said, "I'm Deputy Attorney Helena Voss. We need your testimony." Savannah nodded slowly. Tomorrow morning, the hearing will be closed door for your protection." Savannah signed the papers with a steady hand, but her stomach churned. For years she'd dreamed of justice. Now she wasn't sure she could survive it. That night, she couldn't sleep. Rain drummed against the windows, and memories played like broken film reels. Marcus's voice, the slammed doors, the bruising words that never left marks but always left wounds. She rose from bed, barefoot, and stood before the mirror again. This time, she didn't see fear. She saw exhaustion. "I'm tired of surviving," she whispered. "I want to live." Behind her, Elijah stirred awake. "Then, live, Sav. You already died once. Don't let him bury you again." The courthouse smelled like cold marble and disinfectant. Savannah walked in with her head high, wearing a simple gray suit and no makeup. The cameras were kept outside, but she could still hear the chaos beyond the walls. Deputy Voss led her to a room with 4 officials and a recorder. "Mrs. Cole," one of them began, "can you describe your relationship with your husband prior to your disappearance?" Savannah took a deep breath. It was curated, like a museum exhibit. From the outside, perfect. Inside, empty. She spoke for hours about the manipulation, the humiliation, the quiet terror of living beside a man who smiled in public and rotted in private. When she finished, her throat was dry, her hands trembling, but her voice hadn't broken once. Voss stood, eyes shining. "Thank you, Mrs. Cole. You've done something historic today." Savannah nodded faintly. "I didn't want history. I wanted peace." Meanwhile, Marcus's defense strategy was collapsing. His former aides turned witnesses. Leaked audio confirmed his abuse. Financial records tied him to illegal campaign funding. When his lawyer suggested a public apology, Marcus laughed bitterly. "Apologized to a ghost. She doesn't even exist anymore." But she did, and she was more alive than ever. Camille's article series, The Resurrection of Savannah Cole, shattered readership records. Donations poured into the Maya Solar Foundation. Women from across the country came forward to share their stories. Some survivors, some still trapped. The shelter became a sanctuary and a symbol. Savannah spent her days teaching workshops, guiding therapy groups, listening to confessions that mirrored her own pain. Yet, every time she looked into their eyes, she saw herself the same trembling hope, the same fractured courage. A month into the investigation, Evelyn Cole appeared unannounced at the shelter. Savannah froze when she saw her mother-in-law, immaculate as always, yet fragile in a way she'd never seen. "Savannah," Evelyn said softly, "you shouldn't be here." "I had to be. They're going to destroy him. I needed to see you before that happens." Savannah's tone was icy. "Destroy him? He did that himself." "I know," Evelyn whispered, "but I let it happen. I let him become what his father was." Savannah stared, torn between rage and empathy. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears. "He hurt you because I taught him power meant never saying sorry. For that, I'm the one who needs forgiveness." Savannah's voice trembled. "Forgiveness isn't a favor. It's a freedom. I don't know if I'm ready to give it yet." Evelyn nodded. "Then take your time. I just needed to say it." As she turned to leave, Savannah said quietly, "You should tell him that, not me." "I tried," Evelyn whispered. "He doesn't listen anymore." That evening, news broke that Marcus Cole had been formally charged with obstruction of justice and domestic abuse. His political career was over. Camille called Savannah immediately. "It's done. You won." Savannah looked around the quiet shelter, at the laughter of children, the voices of healing women, the smell of soup simmering in the kitchen. "No," she said softly, "we won, but the victory felt hollow." That night, as she walked through the foundation garden, she saw one of the women sitting alone on the bench, crying. Savannah sat beside her. "He said I was worthless." The woman sobbed. "Now he's in jail, but I still feel small." Savannah took her hand. "Healing isn't about his punishment, it's about your peace." The woman nodded weakly. Savannah smiled. "You're not small, you just forgot how big your heart is." Later, Elijah found her staring at the stars. "You okay?" he asked. "I'm 3, but it feels strange, like I don't know what to do with all this silence." He smiled softly. "Then fill it with something that matters." She leaned against him. Maybe I will. Maybe it's time to write. He chuckled. You already have. She looked up at him. No, Elijah, not as Maya, not as a ghost, but as Savannah. And in that quiet moment, under the weightless night, she felt something new stirring, not revenge, not fame, but rebirth. 6 months after the trial, spring came quietly to the city. The Maya Solar Foundation had expanded new dormitories, a therapy wing, and a small rooftop garden where survivors grew lavender, tomatoes, and hope. Savannah stood there one morning, barefoot in the soil, her hands dirty, her hair undone. The air smelled like earth and rain, the scent of beginnings. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like she was running from ghosts. She was planting roots. Elijah joined her, holding 2 mugs of coffee. Still up with the sunrise? He asked. Old habits die hard. New ones can grow. He handed her a mug. I found a publisher interested in your journals. She froze. The ones I wrote as Maya. No, he said gently. The ones you wrote as you. Savannah looked down at her hands, scarred, steady. I'm not sure the world needs another story about pain. Elijah smiled faintly. Maybe not, but it needs stories about what happens after pain. That evening, she sat in her small office and opened a fresh notebook. The page was blank. Waiting. She began to write. My name is Savannah Cole. I once lived in a cage made of silence and diamond rings. Now, I live among women who teach me what strength really looks like. Her words came slow at first, hesitant, like a wound learning to breathe, but soon they flowed, spilling years of buried thoughts. Every sentence was a seed, every paragraph a small resurrection. Meanwhile, Marcus's trial reached its final verdict. He was sentenced to 8 years in prison. When the judge read the charges, abuse, coercion, falsified reports, Marcus didn't flinch. But when Savannah refused to attend the sentencing, he finally looked broken. Camille later told her. He asked if you'd ever forgive him. Savannah just smiled sadly. Forgiveness isn't something he gets to ask for. It's something I choose when I'm ready. Weeks passed, and life began to feel ordinary again, which, to Savannah, was the most extraordinary thing of all. She spent her days teaching writing workshops to survivors. Some of them couldn't yet say their own names without shaking. She understood that trembling. It was how healing sounded before it became strength. One day, a young woman named Mia asked her, do you ever miss who you were before all this? Savannah thought for a moment. No, she said softly, but sometimes I miss not knowing pain. That version of me died, and that's okay, because this one knows how to live. One weekend, Elijah convinced her to leave the city. They drove to the countryside, a small cabin near the water, surrounded by pines. The silence there wasn't heavy like before. It was gentle, forgiving. They cooked together, laughed, and walked barefoot along the lakeshore. One evening, as the sun melted into gold over the horizon, Elijah said quietly, you've built something that outlived your scars. Savannah smiled. You helped me believe I could. He shook his head. You did that on your own. I just reminded you who you were. There was a long pause, the kind that hums between two people who've survived too much to rush anything. Then she said softly, Elijah, do you ever think about starting over? He looked at her, eyes warm. Every time I look at you. For the first time, she didn't flinch at the thought of love. She let it in, quietly, like morning light through a cracked window. That night, she dreamed she was standing in the sea, waves rising and falling around her. But she wasn't drowning anymore. She was floating. When she woke, Elijah was still asleep beside her. The world outside was hushed and new. She reached for her notebook and wrote one line. To rebuild a life is to learn how to stay, even when leaving would be easier. Back in the city, Camille's latest article went viral again, this time not about pain, but about purpose. The title read, From Ghost to Gardener, The Rebirth of Savannah Cole. It captured her perfectly, not as a victim, not even as a survivor, but as a woman who chose to grow where she'd once been buried. Months later, at the Foundation's anniversary gala, Savannah took the stage. Hundreds of women sat before her, survivors, supporters, friends. She looked out at them, her voice steady and bright. When I first built this place, she said, I thought it was for people like me, people who had lost everything, but I was wrong. It's not about loss, it's about what we find after. The crowd was silent, hanging on her every word. We are not what they did to us, Savannah continued. We are what we choose to become next. Applause erupted. Tears shimmered in the room like light on water. Later that night, standing on the rooftop garden, Savannah watched the city lights flicker below. Elijah came up behind her, slipping his arms around her waist. "Look," he whispered, "they're lighting candles in the courtyard." Down below, women were gathering, holding small candles. Each flame a story, a survival. Savannah smiled through her tears. "It's beautiful." "It's you," Elijah said. She leaned into him, watching the lights blur. "Maybe it's all of us," she whispered. "Maybe that's the point." When the last candle faded, Savannah looked to the sky. The stars were faint, but they were there, constant, patient. And for the first time in forever, she didn't wish for anything more, because she already had enough. A year after the trial, Savannah Cole became a name the world suddenly wanted to know. Her memoir, The Woman Who Forgot Her Own Name, had been published quietly at first, a limited run, small publisher, no marketing campaign. But then, women began sharing it. Nurses, teachers, mothers, strangers who whispered, "This is my story too." Within 3 months, it became a national bestseller. Within 6, it became a movement. Every morning, her inbox overflowed with letters, stories of survival, pain, and the quiet courage of women who had been unseen for too long. Savannah read every single one. Sometimes she cried, sometimes she laughed. "Always," she wrote back. "But with the light came weight, the kind that presses down on you even as you rise." On a crisp October morning, she sat backstage at a televised interview. Her first major appearance since the book's success. Makeup artists swirled around her, smoothing foundation, fixing curls. A producer leaned in, voice tight with enthusiasm. "Mrs. Cole, the host may ask about your marriage. Feel free to skip anything uncomfortable." But Savannah interrupted gently. "I'm not ashamed of my story. Not anymore." When the red light of the camera blinked on, she smiled, calm, grounded, radiant. The interviewer leaned forward. "Savannah, millions of readers say your book gave them courage. But how do you handle the people who say you're exploiting your pain for fame?" For a moment, the air tightened. Then Savannah said softly, "Fame was never my goal. Healing was, and if my healing helped someone else start theirs, then the pain wasn't wasted." The studio fell silent. Then came applause, not loud, but sincere. That night, she went home exhausted. Elijah was waiting on the couch, watching the replay. "You looked like you owned the world," he said with a grin. She dropped her heels by the door and curled beside him. "I just wanted to survive the day without shaking." He brushed her hair back. "You did more than that. You showed up. That's half the battle." Savannah smiled. "The other half, believing you deserved to." But not everyone saw her light as hope. Some headlines twisted her story. "Congressman's ex-wife turns trauma into profit." Talk shows debated whether she was a hero or a fraud. One night, while scrolling through her phone, Savannah stumbled on a post that read, "She should have stayed quiet. Women like her ruin good men's reputations." Her hands trembled. For a second, she was back in that marble kitchen, hearing Marcus's cold voice. "You might want to fix that before people start talking." Elijah found her sitting in the dark, screens still glowing in her lap. He crouched beside her. "Hey, don't let them drag you back there." "I thought I was past this," she whispered. "Scars don't mean you're healed. They mean you survived. But sometimes they ache when it rains." She laughed softly through tears. "Always the poet, huh?" He smiled. "Always for you." 2 weeks later, she was invited to speak at the National Conference on Women's Empowerment in Washington. The irony didn't escape her. Returning to the city where she once disappeared, she stood behind the curtain, palms sweating, staring at the crowd beyond the stage. Thousands of faces, cameras, the hum of anticipation. Then she saw Lena, her daughter, sitting in the front row, tears already in her eyes. Savannah took a breath and stepped into the light. "My name is Savannah Cole," she began, "and for years, I was the shadow of a man the world admired." The audience hushed. "I disappeared in plain sight, smiling for cameras, shrinking for comfort, surviving for everyone but myself. But one day, I realized something simple. Silence doesn't protect you. It buries you." Her voice wavered, but she didn't stop. "I wrote my story because I was tired of pretending that pain had to be polite, because women shouldn't have to be quiet to be respected." The room erupted in applause, rising to its feet when she stepped off stage. Lena ran into her arms. "Mom," her daughter whispered, trembling, "you're incredible." Savannah smiled through tears. "No, baby, I'm finally real." That night, as they walked together along the Potomac River, Lena asked, Do you ever think about Dad? Savannah hesitated. Sometimes, not with hate, not even sadness, just distance. He's part of my story, but not my ending. Lena squeezed her hand. Then what is your ending? Savannah looked out at the water, moonlight rippling across it. This, she said softly, walking free. With you, that's enough. Months later, Savannah's book tour took her overseas. London, Paris, Johannesburg. Everywhere she went, women hugged her, cried with her, whispered, "Thank you for saying what we couldn't." One afternoon in Johannesburg, an elderly woman took her hands and said, "Child, pain is a seed. Some bury it, you let yours grow." Savannah smiled, eyes wet. "I think that's the only way I know how to live now." When she returned home, the foundation was thriving. Elijah had overseen its growth, new programs, legal aid centers, mentorships. He met her at the airport, holding a small bouquet of wildflowers. "Welcome back, best-selling author." He teased. She laughed, dropping her suitcase. "You kept the place alive without me." "I kept it waiting," he said. Then, quietly, "Savannah, I know you've spent your life building everyone else's freedom, but maybe it's time you build yours." She blinked. "What do you mean?" He took her hands. "Marry me." Savannah froze, not from fear, but from disbelief. "Elijah." He smiled. "No rush, no pressure, just a promise that you'll keep choosing yourself, and maybe, one day, me too." She stared at him, heart trembling. Then she whispered, "Ask me again, when the garden blooms." He nodded, smiling. "Then, I'll plant something beautiful." That night, she stood alone on the rooftop, looking over the city. Her reflection in the glass was no longer a ghost. It was a woman of flesh, of courage, of light. She whispered to her past self, "We made it." And for the first time, she truly believed it. Spring came early that year. In the courtyard of the Savannah Cole Foundation, almond trees burst into blossom before the calendar said they should. Their white petals drifted through the air like snow, settling on the benches, on the grass, on the hands of the women who came there seeking a second chance. It was exactly how Savannah had imagined it when she and Elijah first designed the place, a sanctuary that didn't look like an institution but like a home. Every morning, she walked through the garden barefoot, coffee in one hand, notebook in the other. The air carried laughter, children chasing butterflies, women tending to small vegetable beds, music coming faintly from an open window. It felt like heaven had decided to bloom on earth for a moment. But that morning, she woke with a heaviness in her chest, not pain, not sadness, just the unmistakable weight of a chapter nearing its end. Elijah found her sitting on a bench under the almond tree, writing in her notebook. "You've been out here since dawn," he said softly. Savannah smiled without looking up. "The world's quieter before everyone wakes up. Easier to hear what matters." He sat beside her. "What are you writing?" "My last letter," she said. His heart skipped. Last, she turned to him with that calm, knowing gaze that had always unnerved and comforted him at once. "For the women who'll come after me. For Lena. For you." Elijah reached for her hand. "Don't talk like that." Savannah laughed gently. "Elijah, love isn't afraid of endings. It knows they're just beginnings in disguise." Later that day, a group of volunteers arrived with a new shipment of books. Lena came too, now 21, studying creative writing at a small university nearby. Her face carried her mother's softness and her father's eyes, but none of his bitterness. She hugged Savannah tightly. "I read your book again last night," she said. "It still makes me cry." Savannah brushed her cheek. "Then maybe it's time you write something that makes you cry." Lena smiled. "I'm trying." They walked together through the garden, stopping by the small plaque that stood near the main entrance. It read, "The Maya House, a place where women remember who they are." Lena traced the engraved letters with her fingers. "Do you ever miss her, the woman you used to be?" Savannah thought for a long moment. "No, I mourned her, but I don't miss her. She was built on silence. I'm made of sound." That evening, a soft rain began to fall. Light, silver, cleansing. Savannah stood by the window of her room, watching droplets slide down the glass. She wore a white linen dress and her hair was loose, gray strands framing her face. Elijah came in, holding 2 cups of tea. "You shouldn't stand there too long. You'll catch a chill." She smiled faintly. "I like the rain. It feels like forgiveness." He set the cups down. "You look peaceful." "I am," she said simply. Later, when the rain stopped, Elijah found her asleep on the couch, her notebook open on her lap. He went to cover her with a blanket and then realized she wasn't breathing. For a moment, the world held its breath with him. He touched her hand. It was warm. Her lips still carried the faintest trace of a smile. She was gone gently, quietly, as if she'd simply stepped into another garden. Elijah sat beside her, tears falling soundlessly. He didn't scream. He didn't call anyone. He just whispered, "You kept your promise. You bloomed." The funeral was private, just Lena, Elijah, and the women whose lives Savannah had touched. Her ashes were scattered beneath the almond tree in the courtyard. Lena whispered, "She'll always be here, every time it blooms." Elijah nodded, placing a small locket into the soil. Inside was a lock of Savannah's hair and a tiny note she had written months earlier. "When you doubt yourself, touch this. Here is the part of me that will never leave." Weeks passed. The world mourned in its own way. News outlets ran tributes. Bookstores sold out of her memoir again. People left letters at the foundation gates, thanking her for words that had saved them. Elijah kept the foundation running. Some days he would walk through the hallways and almost hear her humming in the distance. But the real miracle came when Lena found a small manuscript in Savannah's desk. Its cover read, in her looping handwriting, "The Garden Blooms." It was unfinished, just a few chapters, a prologue, and notes written in the margins. But it was enough. Lena read the first line aloud. "Healing is not the end of pain. It's the decision to plant something beautiful where the pain once lived." Tears streamed down her face. She closed the notebook, whispered, "I'll finish it, Mom." Months later, a new book appeared on store shelves, "The Garden Blooms," by Savannah and Lena Cole. It became a testament, not of tragedy, but of transformation. The final chapter, written entirely by Lena, read, "My mother didn't survive her story to become a saint. She lived it to remind us that light is not the absence of darkness, it's the courage to keep shining inside it." Every spring, when the almond trees bloomed, women gathered in the courtyard to celebrate her life. They laughed, danced, told stories. Children painted murals of Savannah, always smiling, always barefoot in the grass. Elijah would stand at the edge of the garden, hands in his pockets, watching the petals fall. And sometimes, when the wind blew softly, he could swear he heard her voice saying, "You did it, Elijah. You kept the light alive." He smiled, eyes glistening. "No, Savannah, you did." That night, Lena sat by her window, writing. She wore the same red bracelet her mother once gave her. Her journal was open, the page half-dash filled. She wrote, "Some women die and vanish. My mother died and multiplied." Then she looked up at the stars, whispering, "Keep blooming, Mom. We're still growing." And in the garden below, the almond tree shimmered, its petals glowing faintly under the moonlight, as if Savannah herself was smiling through every bloom.